I do know this. Older adults have gone too far, so it's up to the youth of America to get to know the real America, not your grandfather's America. And there's only one way to do that. You have to get out of your comfort zone and visit Ohio or West Virginia or California or Texas. So Opinion Nation, is it more important to study America than study abroad? Please comment on my Facebook page and my Twitter feed. Join the conversation with my guest, Allie Stuckey, host from Conservative Review, and radio host and political commentator Ben Kissel. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
So, Allie, I'll start with you. Would it be good for universities to have a program for students to immerse themselves in other cultures within our own great United States?
You know, I loved your piece on this. I thought that this was a wonderful idea as someone who loves the United States of America and is very patriotic, but it hasn't seen very much of America. Quite honestly, I think that this would be a great program. Now, I'm someone who did study abroad when I was in college. I studied in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I got to travel, and I think I learned a lot of wonderful things. I learned how to be independent and resourceful, and of course, I learned not just an appreciation for other cultures, but really an appreciation for being a citizen of the greatest country in the world. But I think that you make an excellent point that right now there is such a misunderstanding about people in other parts of the country. I think it would be great for someone who goes to Cornell in Ithaca, New York, to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and know what it's like in OSU and vice versa, simply to break out of the stereotypes that we have known for so long.
It's painful to know, Ben, that many Americans don't travel within their own country. They don't bother to get to know their fellow Americans. It makes me sad.
Well, I have to say there's a lot of different reasons that one might be able to travel, whether it be for work. I'm a performer, so we do live shows all across the country and all across the world. One of the issues when it comes to education is the cost, of course. Studying abroad, it's roughly $30,000 per semester, as opposed to if you study here at a public school, it's roughly 10 grand a semester, 30 for a private. So it's still very expensive, and it's difficult for a lot of people to afford. So I think it's a luxury that some people in this country have, and others just simply can't afford to do it.
And I understand that, but maybe we should put the onus on universities then, that they offer these programs, not only at private universities, but at public institutions as well, who also offer study abroad programs, by the way. Right, Allie?
Yeah, they absolutely do. And I mean, speaking of cost, it would probably be a lot cheaper for them to offer domestic programs rather than foreign programs. And there's something to be learned for that. I think we have this very exotic idea that we will learn more if we go to Scotland or if we go to Italy, which again is wonderful, but that's not necessarily true. And it's not always practical. Some of the most pragmatic and useful knowledge and utilitarian knowledge that we can gain could be from going to, just a few states over rather than crossing an ocean.
And I think it's so important, Ben, because, as again, I'm from Ohio, Canton, Ohio, where football
I'm
began.
Wisconsin. I'm Midwest with you all the way.
Wisconsin, okay. So I'm in California now, and some people will say the most outrageous things to me about Ohioans, and then I'll say to them, do you know that I was born in Canton, Ohio? I was educated at Kent State University in Ohio. I spent my young adult life in Ohio, and they say, you did? You don't seem like you did.
You said, you mentioned how a lot of folks associate cheese with the Midwest, and I want to say that's a positive thing. I would assume they're coming from it and saying, it's full of cheese, it's the land of glorious cheese. And I would say you are correct, that is my home state of Wisconsin. But when it goes, just going back to the conversation regarding diversity of thought, really is what we're talking about here. You do get a lot of international flair as well at our universities here in the country. 85%, that's what exchange students are up 85%. There are a lot of people from all walks of life in these local universities, so you do get a little bit of flair of the world right here in this country as well. But it also comes down to the education that a lot of these kids are getting, and I'm a little bit concerned. I was just looking here. There's a class in Skidmore, the sociology of Miley Cyrus. I love Miley Cyrus. I'm Team Miley all the way, but I think she would even agree that's kind of a waste of money.
Jeez. I don't know the specifics of the class, so I'm going to hold off on judging. But Allie, I did want to ask you this. Why do you think Americans have such stereotypical views of one another? Why do we all have to fit into one category simply because we're born or live in a particular place in this country?
Well, I think in large part it has to do with what we see on television. For example, I was born and raised in Dallas. People know the show Dallas. They ask me if I ride horses places. No, I don't ride a horse anywhere. And also, we see a lot of values coming out of LA from the shows they produce. We see a lot of values coming out of New York City from the shows and movies they produce as well. But I do think it's important. Ben talked about traveling for work. I have traveled to California for work, and I'll just be honest, I definitely have a mentality of California that is largely progressive and politically correct. But when I visited Fresno and Bakersfield and Visalia, what I learned was that what I thought were California values are not necessarily values for the entire state. They have agriculture, so they have different politics, they have different priorities and concerns. And I found that I related a lot more to them than I do with some people in Houston and in Dallas, which is another reason why I think it's so important to travel and realize that individuals from different backgrounds are all across the country.
All across. And I also think it's important to immerse yourself in an opposite political culture from your own and get to know people on a personal level instead of just, you know, from the national politicians that we hear spouting, I don't know, spouting the same old stuff. And the fact is that most Americans are somewhere in the mushy middle. They might lean right or lean left, but most of us are not extreme.
Yeah, and one of the great ironies is if you go to a very blue state, very liberal state like California, you're going to hear a lot of complaints about liberal policies, and vice versa. If you go to Texas, there's going to be a lot of folks who are complaining about conservative policies. So you actually will be able to relate to folks at any bar in the country, I promise. You go there, you sit down, you'll find someone to talk to within 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
It's true.
Allie Stuckey, Ben Kissel, thank you so much for a great conversation. And if you want to read more on this topic,